Hello, welcome to another English Sparkling with Tweedy video. It is in fact Easter Sunday, early evening Easter Sunday. I wasn't sure if the heath would be particularly busy or not. It's a mixed picture, I would say. Some bits where there normally would be a concentration at this time on a Sunday, actually not so busy. It is a bit glum and a tiny bit chillier than it's been earlier in the week, but other bits, weirdly, there's something akin to an illegal rave going on 100 metres or so away from where I'm sitting. I don't know if that's being picked up on the audio. I can just about hear it with my ears, but thankfully the bird song is doing a decent job of drowning that out, so I'll sit here for at least a while. If it gets any louder, I may have to move. Another wine from Everflyght today. You may recall from the previous video, if you saw that, I tried their Blanc de Noir 2020, and I think around the same time, some months ago, they released this wine, which they describe as their late release edition 1. I haven't actually done my homework on this, so I don't entirely recall the difference between this and their regular brut, other than it's somewhat more expensive. I can't be bothered with the blurb. I could stop the video, look it up on my phone and recount it, but they think this is a step up from their regular brut. Let's see if that is indeed the case. Interesting pop sound. I often have to reduce the volume on those pops during editing because you don't need me to go into the tedious details of YouTube audio normalization, do you? If you think they sometimes sound very quiet in the video compared to the rest of the speech, they actually have often been lowered for boring technical reasons. So that's a relatively deep gold colour. I'm guessing there's a decent amount of Pinot in there, or there's some other cause for this being a little bit deeper, darker coloured than usual. Still very much within the realms of a white sparkling wine, obviously. The first bit of the nose there before I've given it a swirl, quite creamy. I suppose these are autolytic notes. Almost a very faint whiff of yoghurt there, which is generally not a good sign in a sparkling wine. There is a rare wine fault. Is it Lactobacillus, the same strain that creates yoghurt? If that gets into a wine, that can cause an unpleasant sort of creaminess. I don't think we're quite going there, but quite sort of creamy. I suppose this is an autolytic thing, isn't it? Right, let's give that a swirl and give it a fairer test. Still not sure I'm getting a lot in the way of fruit character there, to be honest. Not straight away, anyway. If there is anything there, it's in the subtle sort of appley, lemony, possibly even gooseberry sort of spectrum. I'm slightly thinking of gooseberry fool. Slight creaminess, that kind of fruit character. Wouldn't say that's off to a fantastic start, but perhaps it will fare better on the palate. Perhaps I took an unusually large gulp there. That seemed very mouth-filling. Big bubbles there was the sensation I got on that first sip. And sort of berry character, almost veering into dried fruit notes, I would say, on the palate. Maybe things like dried apricots, raisin sultanas, a little bit of that. There is some amount of zing there, but I think, again, Everflight, all of their wines go through malolactic fermentation, so most of the harsh green apple acids, as I was saying on the previous video, would have been converted into lactic acid, and that's possibly part of the reason this is coming across as quite creamy. Again, on the palate, quite a creamy sensation there. So I suppose we've gone from gooseberry fool on the nose to something like spotted dick, some sort of custardy baked dessert that also involves some baked fruit, dried fruit. I did stop for a moment, partly because it looked like someone was weirdly taking photos of me over there, but also probably appear in a publication about Hampstead Heath eccentrics, I imagine. But also, I looked at the tasting notes on the website, the official tasting notes from Everflight. It does seem to be roughly agreeing with some of the things I'm finding. They talk about sort of richness and buttery and stewed fruits, and there was a hint of apricot there as well. So it is roughly along the lines of what I'm describing. They also talked about some red apple notes that perhaps I missed at first, but yeah, maybe they're there. The grape breakdown is roughly half and half between the Chardonnay and the Pinot. So again, I think I was on the right lines when I was suggesting I thought this was a little bit darker than something that was predominantly Chardonnay might have turned out to be. 49% Chardonnay, mostly the rest is Pinot Noir, but there was something like 4% of Pinot Meunier. About 14% of the overall fruit is matured for a while in oak barrels, and that might also be contributing to some of these creamy notes along with that malolactic fermentation. There's about 3.5 years, something like that, on the lees. It's not quite sure I understand what the late release bit actually corresponds to. This is essentially a 2019 vintage. I think there might be some reserve wine involved as well. I think I do get some appley notes now that I've had that idea put into my mind. Slightly cidery, actually. Not always necessarily welcome in an English sparkling. I mean, I like appley notes if they're sort of refined, gentle apple notes. When it goes a little bit cidery, then I'd rather be drinking cider. But it does have more refinement on the palate. It's quite a soft palate in a way. So I think that characterization of this as sort of baked English puddings, bread and butter puddings, spotted dick, that kind of thing, involving custard and lots of butter, I think is reasonably fair. Something that would have kind of dried stewed fruits in it plus something creamy like custard. It's that kind of ballpark we are talking about here. The acidity is relatively low, as mentioned. I think that's as a result of that malolactic. All of that said, I don't want to give the impression this is some sort of sparkling wine equivalent of jam. It is pretty dry, actually, and I think the dosage was that even slightly below 6, so this is into extra brut territory, I think. I may have got that wrong. I'll put a correction on screen if that was the case. Quite a lot going on here, actually. Creamy, sort of desserty, but also at the same time very dry. Stewed, dry fruits. There is a richness to it, and the acidity is very moderate, I think, by English sparkling standards. I think in a way there are aspects of this that are quite champagne-like. Some of the fruit that often tends to manifest in champagne, the few times that I've revisited it recently, seems to be more of that stone fruit like apricots and less of the lemons and apples or plums and other stone fruit and hedgerow fruit that you'd find in English sparkling. I might come back to you if I have further thoughts after another glass or two. I would say initially I'm not as taken by this as I was by the Blanc de Noir the other day. This is definitely interesting, and I think it probably will appeal to some people. I'm not sure it's exactly my style, my ideal style of English sparkling. As I say, if I have any further thoughts, I'll come back to you, but if not, cheers.